I think the signal is too weak. Let's boost it.
Venus wraps his radio around the house radio, and Neptune plunges hers into the wood. Jupiter lights the coil of incense nestled in the middle of her speaker. It turns red for a moment.
I don't think anyone's signaling. West, Group West. This is Group West. Who's calling me? Even the devil can use radio, you know?
God, this sentence feels like such a... Like, this is not something that was told to me growing up.
Uh-huh.
But this feels like such a, like, equivalent. If we all carried around radios growing up, people would be saying to me all the time, like, even the devil can use radio, you know? Like,
This is the idle hands makes the devil's work of We Know the Devil world.
it's like the perverse opposite of the Lord works in mysterious ways.
Oh God.
Which are you familiar with the phrase? Like, you've heard the phrase the Lord works in mysterious ways,
Yes,
right?
this one I do now.
But like, which is deployed most often in the, something happened that we don't have an explanation for.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem to make sense. Like, well,
The most I told the story on co-host a couple like weeks ago, but there's the place I remember this phrase from was the time that somehow this like weird pseudo-Christian dude just got invited to like give a presentation about his beliefs in our comparative government class. For those of you who don't follow me on co-host, the broad strokes for the story is that he said he was not a Christian, but then basically he believed all the same things as a Christian. And at one point, someone in our majority, like, Hindu and Buddhist class, was like, I mean, not that, I don't know how many of us were actively religious, but, like, that was our cultural background, and somebody was like, okay, so wait, do you believe that, like, people who aren't, followers of Jesus are going to hell? And he kind of, like, gives this apologetic, well, I guess that's what the Bible says, so... And then there's this weird beat of silence, but immediately after, I remember one of the few Christians who was in the class, like, asked about, like, okay, but, like trying to resolve the like, paradox of suffering in an omnipotent, loving God question, where it's like, okay, but well, if God is omnipotent and does love us, then why does he allow, like, infants to die, or things like that? And that's where I think I, like, first heard the phrase deployed in real life, and not just as something I saw online.
Truly wild. The guy really reminds me of, are you familiar with independent Scientologists?
No. And I'm not sure I want to be.
Basically, they're people who have, like, left the cult, but still, like, believe the L. Ron Hubbard side of things. Just, anyways, a similar sort of thing. Like, oh, well, I'm not one of them, but I do happen to espouse and evangelize for their beliefs. Especially the more, like, supernatural side of things.
Wild.
The devil could do whatever, and if you worry about every little thing, that's just another way he can get to you. Don't you read Lewis?
We're the only ones out here. There's no one else to come after. I don't hear anyone. What should we do? Could ask God? That sounds kinda... No, I promise, it's easy. We just need some extra wire. I just have to open up the radio box and...
Okay. As long as you do all the work, I'm fine with it.
Someone should go get wire. Venus can stay here and tinker, and one of us should spot for him.
I don't want to go back to the shacks.
Rock, paper, scissors?
Sure. Here we exclude Jupiter.
Yep. I guess I'm going? Scream if something horrible happens.
Do the same, please. As loud as possible.
Arg! Like that?
The worst. Try harder or I won't save you next time.
See you guys later.
What a fun binary here of like happy Neptune and pouty, mad, sad, disappointed Venus.
Have we seen this one before? I
don't know. If we have, it's been many sessions because it would have been in our very first route. And that's a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
She's okay, I guess. And of course, this coming straight off of
they just made out in a closet.
Right. Well, Venus is just like, God. And they're like teasing each other and everything. And God.
Venus like specifically put them there.
Right. Venus like volunteered and set up the thing so that it can happen.
Like we know from the Jupiter route that like Venus was playing a little bit more hesitant of 7 minutes than she actually like feels because she's trying to set these two up.
Mm-hmm. And like then looking at this and thinking about the you think being nice, like you want something and every kindness of yours will be like, it's like, yeah, Venus does want them to be happy together, but also
and Neptune thinks being mean is more honest.
Yeah.
Themes.
Mm-hmm. She's okay, I guess.
Does that mean you like her?
Just work on the radio.
Oh. Is that a no?
Are you trolling me on literal purpose?
A little.
All-time Venus face.
Yeah, that's real good.
Wow, Venus. I'm almost impressed. You are, deep down, kind of a little shit.
I didn't mean it in a mean way. I wasn't teasing.
That's so much worse, Venus.
I guess I just don't get it. I don't like being mean, and I don't want to be mean, so I try really hard not to be mean. I don't get any of the just kidding, because it's not just kidding. It's just mean. Does it really not bother you when everyone is mean to you?
No. I couldn't care less. They're all just simply bad at it. What are they gonna make fun of me for? Venus sweating. I dare you to answer that question.
No, I wasn't gonna say anything.
Seriously, you totally can, though. I'm an evil, bad slut, right? I'm a bitch and a flirt. I'm a bitch because I let people know when they walk up. I'm a bitch because I let people know when they walk over me. I'm a flirt because boys keep talking at me. This is somehow my problem because they can't get over themselves and leave me alone? How is that fair? Why should I get hurt by that? Makes me so mad. Why would I be anything but mad about all this stupid, obnoxious bullshit?
Oh.
Get it?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like I shouldn't get mad, though. Like, you're supposed to turn the other cheek.
Everything people who love to say that just love slapping people.
Yeah.
Oh, Venus. But you don't have to be like that, you know? You're the only boy here I can stand. So I guess keep doing whatever it is that lets you stay that way.
Thanks. You too.
We did see this before because in the first route.
Yes, this is where I made my.
Yeah.
This is where I tried to make the very. I couldn't make the joke work, but it like my words would just not come. But it was Neptune, like how I look with he/him pronouns in my bio.
Mm-hmm. 2 a.m.
It's done. Well, shall we tune in on God?
Whatever.
We could also try calling the captain again. Yeah, we could.
Just stop. I said I didn't care. Just go ahead. Calling will absolutely make everything worse. It always does. If there was any chance the devil wouldn't come, God will ruin it. But who cares? Of course the devil is coming tonight. So, do it. We arrange our radios in a circle. We all hold on to a length of the copper wire. We feel like we're part of a Christmas display. We pray. We don't really need to pray to it.
Sorry, I'm just so used to it. Start hearing it in my head as soon as we start, every time. Right? It just pops in my head.
Same. It's fine. I'm just saying. We hold hands. We're looking for the signal. We can tell the difference between God and the devil. Finding God is pretty easy. He's 109.8 FM. The devil is never on the same frequency, but you sometimes hear a bit of him by accident when you're changing channels. By the time we find God, he's already talking. He never says, for those just listening. He expects attentiveness. Huh.
I've taken God the last couple times, right?
Yes. Should I take over God since I'm taking over Neptune?
Yeah.
Or should...
Let's switch everything.
What's the scene direction for God?
Every boy you are afraid of talking at once.
Don't you? Hey, Tommy, gotta get some Philip Seymour Hoffman in here. Hey, Kavi. Hey, Kavi, baby. Don't you want to fuck every woman you see just once?
What is this? I don't understand what you're referencing.
This is from The Talented Mr. Ripley.
I don't know what that is. Sure.
It's was it Patricia Highsmith novel? It's a movie. It's a weird queer movie. I would love to watch it with you sometime. Philip Seymour Hoffman plays a character named, I believe, who also shows up in a very brief cameo in the Netflix animated special Neo Yokio.
Huh.
Anyways, his opening line, he like nearly crashes his car in this like beautiful Italian plaza, like winks at a girl and then walks up and just says, "Don't you want to fuck every woman you see just once?" Just once? Only once.
Unhinged behavior.
And so whenever I hear something like "at once," this is the little clip that plays in my head. It's like one of Philip Seymour Hoffman's best acting roles ever, I think.
Incredible.
A hand held against the world.
You can't do that voice for God.
Okay. Okay. What is my?
I feel like this God should
that?
not make you laugh on its first line.
Sure. Okay. So boys you're afraid of. What does my father sound like?
Like I know, but also, goddamn, Juliet.
No, I think Jesus would have been much nicer. At least that's what I always kind of hoped when I was praying.
You are.
Yeah.
Uh, it's like this game is such like I'm like taken aback by how much like it's so intensely like this game just prompts you to say stuff like that all the time, and it's genuinely like I knew that this would happen and I'm still surprised by it. You know what I mean? Ah,
Conjugation of saints. The conjugation of saints. A hand held against the world, to be touched and to touch. Touch is a language unto itself, and it too is a language of power. Thus unto Jupiter, which is also the language of gravity, according... God sounds like every boy you were afraid of, talking at once. The fist which can give it takes two, and gives by taking, or takes by giving. Just as a word is honest or dishonest not by how it is spoken, but by he who speaks it, so is the honesty of touch. What a waste of time.
shh, let's listen.
Whatever. Each of you shall choose. It is certain that the devil is coming.
Oh no.
It is certain. I told you. It is absolutely certain that the devil is already here.
Oh.
Parables 1:1. The devil is only the shadow of man cast from the light of God. The meaning of this parable is that there is no devil. The weather is scheduled for 100 with humidity tomorrow. And now for the news. Jupiter shuts off the radio.
Sorry, it was really I know I said God shouldn't be funny, and it mostly wasn't, but it was very funny to hear you say, and now for the news in that voice.
Right, yeah, like, I mean...
He can be funny at the end.
Or, we can find humor in the fact that a certain type of masculinity is inflexible in what it is trying to convey, regardless of whether that context is appropriate.
Uh-huh.
And in that, like, incongruity, in that, like, idiosyncrasy from what is appropriate and what is performed, like, that's where, like, we, the undivided divinity between us, we, like, queer people can laugh at that.
Mm-hmm. What's the undivided divinity?
A bad shorthand, instead of saying or it's a Borges quote, actually. It's from the very end of
course, the Borges quote. I'm gonna have to read this motherfucker.
Yeah, it's so there's this fun thing about Borges where a lot of his short stories seem like essays, and the contrapoint to that is that some of his essays seem like short stories, and there's one, depending on how you
Kayla Gwyn approach.
I would say, like, even more so. There's like Le Guin, you feel like an honesty, whereas like Borges, even when he's like saying something, it feels like he's writing fiction somehow. And so he'll write about a fake author, and then like the next day he'll write about a real author, but it still feels kind of fake almost.
Incredible.
And this one is Pascal's Fearful Sphere, which like is somewhat memorable for the use of the word effroyable, but typically just translated in English as fearful. It's about the idea that the universe as we know it is let's see if I can get this right, a sphere with an infinite circumference whose like central point is everywhere.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which is like strictly speaking true. And I mean, what I'd like to do now is like pull up the thing and then just read it aloud to you and then discuss it, but maybe that can be our bonus material later on. It ends with the phrase that we, the undivided divinity between us, have dreamt the world. And the idea is that we have dreamt it along like particular axes and speaking on just a handful of metaphors, and that those handful of metaphors across a wide variety of cultures across thousands of years still seem to serve us, and that even in like a scientific like community and civilization that we exist in now, we find in those metaphors a sort of scientific truthness and like a handy way to understand what scientific truth that we do have, if that makes sense. And it always stuck with me that like, oh, of course, like, of course we're the undivided divinity. We, like you and me together, as long as we're not just one, then we're like no longer divided. And like speech as a synthesis between any two or more people is a really nice thing. As soon as you record something written down, what's the Austin Walker quote?
People talk, God's right.
I mean, not too far away from the preceptors of the true font. I'm always thinking though about the Twilight Mirage introduction. The idea of like, since the first grain silos, since the first time we put pen on page, we've always made things bigger,
Different than
larger.
ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And for a long time, we thought we were
building. Oh, do you just want me to say it? For a long time, we thought we were building mirrors, but now we know better. We were setting fires.
Exactly. And that's true, right? It has to be true. It was said in a really persuasive voice, which means it must be true. And I carry that forward in all the work I do.
Juliet, sometimes you say things like that, and I understand you very deeply.
And none watches this.
This is our. Sorry. Go ahead. Say your thing.
And none watches as closely as she at the very center of it all, and now ancient presence dancing like sage in a storm.
This is my moment where Venus is like, but you won't, right? And Neptune is like, Venus, that's the most dangerous thing you've ever said, and explains everything about you.
The canny thing that I found is actually we do have a reference point for this, right? I always get them confused. The Izanagi, right? Like a self-tsukiyomi.
Oh. We're talking about anime now.
Well,
we're talking about Naruto of all things. Oh god.
Well, we segued to Twilight Mirage.
Which, as we know, is the best Naruto arc there ever is.
Up there with Hotel Dusk.
Oh god.
Which is to say, if you can say something persuasively enough, then that can be part of the things that is true for you. For me, at least.
Anyway.
Yeah. Finding it hard to segue back to the... Yeah. Okay. Just gonna rub my face with my hands a little bit and get back into character.
I'm excited for whatever you describe this as in the description of this episode.
We do exactly what we came here to do.
So true.
That's the description. Jupiter shuts off the radio.
I don't want to do this. We should have called the captain.
What would he have done, even?
Something else? It's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's not like being the devil means you're gonna die. The devil just happened.
Don't pity me.
It'll be the end of something. It's me.
Don't? Uh-oh. Doesn't... There we go. Okay. Don't pity me. 3 a.m.
It's interesting to point out.
Mhm.
I think this is true in the law, but Jupiter is never the one who Jupiter does not express that she thinks it's her. I think they all do think it, but Venus and Neptune are the only ones who Venus says it aloud and Neptune gestures at it, but Jupiter doesn't really Jupiter expresses the fear of the devil, but doesn't say, "Oh, it's me," which is interesting because she's right the other two times. But it means that this route has some really fun dramatic irony.
I agree with you, comma, and or but. The listener can choose what conjunction they prefer on this. I think it's interesting to read Jupiter's line here of, I don't want to do this, and it'll be the end of something, as recognizing her fate, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
That she shuts off the radio and she's like, "Oh, it's me.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this. This thing is it's also easy to be like, 'cause the first time you're playing it, you don't know that."
Also, I understand that the dialogue is the way it is, but I'm fascinated by the fact that Venus and Jupiter that Venus and Neptune hear God mention Jupiter's name, and we're like, well, I guess it's me.
Well, part of it is because the other two have, Venus has been seeing lights. Neptune
I guess maybe they think Jupiter's getting mentioned as proof that it's not her.
Right?
Because it's praise, you can read it as praise and not reproach.
And that she is, the idea of Jupiter being the definition of gravity, right? That oh, she's this thing that you're drawn towards and you're going to mess up by being near. I don't know. But at the end of the day, we know the devil. Jupiter has a feeling about her like she knows too. The house creaks like someone is squeezing it gently to see how much it can take before it breaks. We look at Jupiter and we worry. She's even more far away than usual. What do we do? We're expecting her to know, but right now she looks so tired. She just snaps her hairband against her wrist. And we know.
We can wait. Can we? Sure we can. We can keep waiting. Dawn is 3 hours away, right? It'll be here before we know it. We don't need to know who the devil is. It's just a phase. Right?
The synchronized, looking away
Yeah.
at the same time.
Come on. Supposed to agree. It's a good idea. Make fun of me, then go along with it. Please.
We know. It's obvious.
No. I didn't think you were dumb. Hoping. We can feel it. It's like a moth flapping wings. I can feel its fingers on my face and my arms and everywhere. Gross. I'm gross. I feel so distant. When did it happen? It feels like a few hours ago everything was fine.
I like that they're both smiling.
This always happens. I always do this. Every time. I'm so stupid. I'm so... My hairband broke.
There's a horrible sound. The terrible noise of splitting and tearing wood. It's sick. The house shivers.
Ah!
We can't reach her. We can't speak. Not in this storm of hands.
Don't touch me. You shouldn't touch me. I wasn't born good. But I still thought I could. You know, I actually liked it when the captain talked about how heaven was on merit. As long as you do good things, maybe you can one day be good. But then they said we don't believe that anymore, and it's only what's in your heart that mattered. Just when I thought I got it right, they changed it. I can try hard, but I think God knows my heart isn't really in it. And that was my only shot, right? Mom taught me not to touch others. It's just polite, you know? And Dad taught me not to let others touch me. You gotta protect yourself if you're a girl, you know? But if it's only what I feel inside that matters, what am I supposed to do? I can't stop that kind of touch. So what if I just stop trying not to, you know? It feels so strange and weird and bad to stop, but I could. I really could, I think. And how nice would that be?
The humidity is thick with hands. We feel the sweat peeling off of us, and the hands grasping. Ugh. The devil comes in heat, not like a chill in the middle of the night. The devil sticks to your skin and seeps in your pores. The devil licks at your throat, inside, outside, follows wherever you go. Even the best kid has the devil inside her. This is why we are at camp. We are learning this lesson. Even the worst kids can get lucky and live, while the good kid is doomed just from trying too hard. We hold each other.
If you can't, Jupiter... Oh, wait, no. If you really can't, Jupiter, then...
We don't care.
We don't care.
You can be like that, and it's fine. You know we're like that too, right? We feel like that all the time.
We would have just given up if it wasn't for you. Y'all are sweet, but don't do that. I won't be happy if you do. And I won't let you. It's wrong to want such a thing. You know that, don't you? So don't do it. I still know that much. Stop looking up to me. We don't look up to you.
We never did.
We promised. So
please.
Don't try to make me feel better. I want to touch. I want to be touched. I want to hurt. I want to be hurt. And if you feel the same way, you're as bad as me. I was hoping you'd say, "Get behind me," or "I rebuke you," like you're supposed to.
Venus is crying, big tears.
Mm-hmm.
Neptune is smiling, small smile.
Won't you let me feel like a real devil for a moment?
We don't have to like it.
At least give us that much. Okay.
4 a.m. On Jupiter, there is an ancient storm bigger than Earth. It's been blowing since before we were born. This is true. A true thing about Jupiter. Aww. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's no way to imagine it. It is a storm that could consume everyone you knew, everywhere they had been, the site of every thought and feeling humans have ever had. Jupiter reaches out to us. She has a hand for every kind of touch. That hand is for hitting. That hand is for petting. That hand is for grabbing. That hand is for holding. We feel the pull on our skin and recoil. They want so many things from us. Maybe everything. The devil is lonely. We kick about the devil and it must miss us. It keeps begging to be let back. For us to let it in. And Jupiter did. Every wish of the body belongs to it. And every wish is a hand expressing that desire. And every hand is a storm that is bigger than the world reaching for us. But it will not. The hands don't touch us, and the storm doesn't break over us. We chose to be distant from her. And the devil only ever gets one moment. For revenge? For love? For, please, take me back. There is nothing to fear when there is two against the devil. Neptune brings the water. Her radio cackles and bubbles and foams at its sharpest edge. Neptune brings the light. Her radio whines. Thank you. I can't believe that my brain is doing this to me. It's funny because I almost misread the Neptune line as Venus, so. Venus brings the light. Of course Venus brings the light because it's Venus. Literally. Her radio whines and wriggles and coils around itself. Our radios scream and crash against her, and the devil is destroyed. 5 a.m. Is this the one that nobody else finds out about?
Did she do it on purpose?
Maybe a little. Or maybe a lot.
At least a little.
Jupiter looks so peaceful. It was the first thing that came to mind. We both thought it would be us. So it still feels strange to be looking at her like this. Not in a bad way. So, I think you were right about the others thinking it were them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is really interesting. Jupiter knew that someone would need to be the devil. That one of them would need to let the devil in. And Jupiter decided that it would be her so that it wouldn't be Venus or Neptune.
Mm-hmm.
So that neither of them would have to go through the experience of being. I think that works really well on the first level of metaphor, which is to say that that does sound like something that Jupiter would do for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it doesn't work on the second level of metaphor, which is to say, I don't think that Jupiter would bear her soul in secrets to stop one of the others from doing so.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, part of that context is the belief that letting yourself be the devil, letting the devil come through to you, is a bad thing. It's a bad thing happening to you. It damns you, it etc. It's a shame-worthy thing. And she's more willing to take that damnation upon herself. But like what we can so clearly see now that we've played 3 rounds of this game is that it's not a bad thing. Like they should lean into it. They should all lean into it and not fight it. Or I don't know, maybe I'm misreading things, but it certainly feels that way. And I don't know whether I would have felt this way playing this game 15 years ago.
Oh god. Thinking about the you of 15 years ago playing this game is a fascinating thing.
I think I said it before. I don't know that, like, I think it kind of sounded like a joke when I said it before. If I had played this game at that age, I would have spent many years of my life thinking, I guess I gotta get into crystal radios, which sounds like a joke, but I mean it like literally. I would have gone, huh, well, I think getting into crystal radios might actually help protect me from the devil. And like
Yeah.
actively make choices in my life to like pursue and learn that, or like try to get into it every few months but not have the like energy and attention for it, and then feel immense guilt and like, well, I guess I like deserve a bad thing happening to me because I didn't get into crystal radios.
Do you see why I thought you would get Jupiter far better than I do?
And I yeah, I love Jupiter. I love Jupiter.
Good. I'm gonna ask you to explain her to me in a second.
Great.
To get through this scene.
I am not gonna start going by Jupiter.
I know.
Comma. But I did have to think about it for a second.
Oh god.
Jupiter looks looks so peaceful. It was the first thing that came to mind. We both thought it would be us, so it still feels strange to be looking at her like this. Not in a bad way. And of course, Venus, always with the eyes open to see the light, to see anything. And Neptune, eyes shut. We're not upset at her. We just want to know why. Because it was so clear for us. Back when we were walking to the campfire, I thought it would be me. I was so sure. God, I guess I'm wrong sometimes.
Most painful admission Neptune has ever made.
Uh-huh.
Not actually, but, for me it was, I think, when we were putting up the lights, I already saw it in the corner of my eye. And then when Group South came, I felt so, well, you know.
Yeah, I know. The smell of incense is awful enough in here, but outside the tent, the groups are tying rags to their faces to endure the smell while they try to smoke the whole forest out. We have the privilege of being on watch.
It shouldn't have been her. Normally you're like, don't patronize me.
No, you're right. It should have been one of us. Either one of us. I don't care which. Jupiter moves in her sleep. Venus moves a candle out of her way. You're very attentive.
Thanks. I keep thinking.
Don't worry about it. What are we going to do? Fight over which of us hates ourselves more? What's the point? Neither of us can beat her. We hold hands. Or, it turned out, we already were.
And that's We Know the Devil.
Is this just Jupiter's ending, comma, or was that the true ending?
That was not the true ending.
Okay.
The true ending is obtained by balancing all of the choices perfectly.
But you can see how I could think that like this is like an unlockable scene that there's a version of, regardless of who is your third, or like if you play Jupiter, I don't know. I am so fascinated that we got Jupiter third, though. Like I'm
That
glad.
is exactly,
So
yeah.
glad.
That would play out the same if we'd gotten Jupiter first.
Huh.
What about this? Makes it seem truer to you.
Oh, that we get specific insight into either of them feeling like they could have been the devil.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's easy to forget or miss the Neptune like "Don't pity me" thing. But
Right.
like the things I was picking up on, like Venus seeing the lights and everything. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, like Venus says it here, like, hey, I thought it was me from the moment I saw the lights. And like earlier when I like did the thumbnail of like creepy Venus, like not Venus being a creep, but like literally like slightly frightening because of the like happy Venus with that little smile and the big wide eyes and everything.
Uh-huh.
Um and then once you like pointed out to me that there's like more indications of everything, it's it's rare to ask a work to be less subtle. I think this game could have been less subtle and still been great, is I guess
Mhm.
what I would say. But what a great game.
It's a really great game, and we're not even done. Uh, we have like, we don't have a ton of new content to go through because we've seen almost everything at this point.
Mm-hmm.
If we could probably fast forward through most of the first half of the game, um,
Mm-hmm.
at this rate. Um, I think there's going to be a couple new things in the second half, basically starting from there's a couple of new scenes and then the new ending, starting from just about where we have the scene of which of them goes out and which
Right.
stays
Right.
behind.
Mm-hmm.
God damn it. Okay. Sorry about my audio, gang.
I don't
Anyway,
think it got
what was I
too
saying?
bad.
The new stuff starts from where the new stuff starts from the scene where they're deciding which one of them is going to go out and which one of them is going to stay in the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get there, what do you think about Jupiter?
Well, you know the saying about Jupiter, right?
I'm about to find out the saying about Jupiter, I hope.
Well, there's like a I would there's a desire in me to call it a quiet pronouncement, but I don't think that's right. I think it's closer to like I mean catechism is closer. Uh there's a saying that we're taught as children, and you may have actually been taught this too. Uh about gender and Jupiter and like desire. Uh
Oh, right. Not where I thought you were going.
uh-huh.
I thought you were going to say something that sounded much more profound.
That's my secret, Captain. It's always exactly that profound. Um,
Oh my
uh,
god.
for the listeners
This
at
sounded
home, I
more
will.
profound.
I could just put the explanation of the joke on the screen in captions. I think that might be best.
That'd be funnier. Yeah.
Uh,
Uh,
Jupiter. So I thought I knew Jupiter in the first route from Jupiter's first explanation at the campfire. This idea of, okay, no one else wants to lead, I guess I will. No one else like can or should do the thing, I guess I'll do it. And then the like people calling on Jupiter to fill in for things, and Jupiter doing pretty good, but then like failing at the last second. I was like, okay, I totally like I get all of Jupiter. And then she started talking about like her dad.
mhm.
and like alcohol and queerness. And I was like, huh, huh. And then we had this scene in the closet, which it took me literally to the second row. I was like, oh my God, it's that Jupiter and Neptune want to leave the thing they have in the closet.
Mm-hmm.
I, I, I did not even pick up on that in the whole first round. And then the second round, I was like, oh, Jupiter's thing. Like, I get Jupiter. Jupiter is someone who's like experienced a specific kind of like uncomfortable attention, potentially like that like is, I would say, unquestionably like traumatic. However, like closely we look at the captain's attention towards her
Mm-hmm.
and or previous things that have happened to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, I think I get Jupiter some. This route in the actual like ending paints to me a very different picture about like what Jupiter's primary motivation sort of is, what Jupiter's like struggle and sort of concept is.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to one of my friends earlier today about this game and how interested I was in this route, in part because Jupiter in some ways seems like the protagonist of this game.
Mm-hmm.
Despite there being three main characters who we all get to see a lot from,
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter is the first one who speaks. Jupiter's the first one who we see the model of.
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter's also has the benefit of like when the three of them are talking, Jupiter's always in the center, right?
Yeah.
Jupiter also has the benefit of, and this is going to be one of those things about like Jupiter's as initially presented to us, you know, like I'm talking before we make any choices.
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter's presented to us as more generic, which
Mm-hmm.
also trends towards being more of a protagonist, more of a like central like point of view or like narrator character. Venus clearly has like a lot of gender struggles going on, or gender opportunities, you might call them, as well as like self-esteem and like shyness and like bullying and all of these things that are like very clearly presented there. And like, so you can be like, okay, I get Venus. That's the thing. Neptune, I mean, one of the biggest things is we see her texting. Like, we have a whole interlude with her just texting. And so we're like, okay, that's part of Neptune's thing. She's bitchy, she's standoffish, she's texting, and she's not white. And those things, as well as being kind of like, oh, I'm on the left, oh, I'm on the right, like as identifying markers, leave Jupiter as kind of amorphous by comparison, if that makes sense. And like, I recognize I'm a white person like saying this, but I also do think this is a like trend in storytelling towards having like this protagonist as this like cipher that you can insert whatever into. And so I was very interested to find out what a Jupiter exclusion route would be, because Neptune and Venus's stories seem so much clearer from the beginning and seem to have like a stronger through line. And I kind of think that's still very true. I think Jupiter is really interesting, and it's kind of interesting that as we unpack a different like unpeel a petal of a flower or what have you, we get to see a different kind of thing that she's struggling with at different points in time. And then in the end, it's just this kind of overwhelming idea. I was a little surprised at how specific her devil seemed, kind of in like how specifically the idea of touch seems to continue and connect across these things.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, go back and look, and she feels the hands on her scalp, and like Venus feels the hands around her neck when they're in the 7 minutes in heaven together and that sort of thing. But despite that being a recurring like phantom around her, I don't know that it seems like a recurring theme that's seated the way the other two have their themes seated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's interesting. I expected you, given your actual Jupiter, like, behavior.
Uh-huh.
Sorry. I couldn't think of a nicer way to say that.
No
I got
problem.
halfway through the sentence and realized it was kind of mean. But, given...
It's okay. You can say it about me.
Given the resemblance between Jupiter's personality and your own,
Mm-hmm.
what I was going to say was I am surprised that it didn't like. The thing with touch and being touched is like there is like a cipher for like this is a cipher for sexuality, right? Like it
Sure.
just
Mhm.
is like as much as like both in the sense of like being queer and in the sense of being horny, like there is a sense of like, and I think this is part of why I say Jupiter is kind of the most alien to me, because this is something I've come to understand intellectually after talking to a lot of other people who have much more experience with Christianity than I do. But like there's this real deep sense of like there's a deeper sense of shame around the idea that like a human being would even be sexual than I have ever really seen or like ever experienced in my own life. And like I like my cultural background here is that I grew up in the country which makes Bollywood movies where people rarely kiss but also like are constantly dancing in the horniest swimsuits possible or shirtless with like six-pack abs. And like every cultural product is like, you know, as much as sexuality is supposed to be officially repressed, every cultural product is like overflowing with this like barely controlled like desire to experience attraction and touch and all this other stuff. And it's like, you know, my experience with this is people running right up to the line because there's an official rule that you can't cross the line, but that means that everyone just like stands right at the edge of the line anyway. And Jupiter's not that. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
for her, it's like you have to stay, you know, you have to stay 1,000 miles away from this thing because even dancing towards it slightly is like an error on your part. And the other thing that I think is interesting about this is that like it makes her. I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna sound meaner than I mean it,
Good.
or
Great.
than I intend it. Jupiter's self-hatred is one of the more like it stands. The original way I think this is that Jupiter's self-hatred is deeply selfish, perhaps the most deeply selfish. And my like the thing that I keep trying to revise it to, even as it comes out of my mouth, is there is something about the selfishness of Jupiter's self-hatred that stands out to me more than the other two. Wherein she says, like, I wasn't born good. I thought I could be good, but no, it turns out this is the way you're born. And if you two feel the same way as me, you're just as bad. Because the scope of that condemnation is huge. It's unbelievably huge. And, like, you know, in the literal sense, obviously there, like, the sort of, like, weird contradiction of Christianity is, like, and, you know, I think this is to some degree true of other religions, but definitely Christianity is, like, the concept of, like, heathenry going to hell, of, like, you have to follow this path or no path at all, is, like, there are so many fucking people in the world. Even Christianity, the most populous religion in the world, is, like, what, a ninth at this point of the globe's population?
I think that depends on a lot of how you count. But
How many people are in the world?
About 8.45 billion.
Okay. And then Christians is like 1.2 billion?
Sounds plausible.
Yeah. Okay, so an eighth, not a ninth. Oh, close to a fourth. Shit. Because it says 2.4 billion.
I also think, though, like, what you count as Christian really matters on that sort of census-wide thing.
Yes. But to say, here's what I will say. At the very least, that is a condemnation of 3/4 of the world population. At minimum.
Sure.
possibly, and in many cases, probably more. And it like, on the literal level, I think it is easy to see that and get mad. But like, even stepping into Jupiter's like what Jupiter really means by this, which is that the fact that I experience immoral desires makes me immoral, right? It is such a thing. I don't know, like even the logic of birth as a form of like condemnation.
Yeah, sin passing.
Yeah. Or just like the idea that this is something that is like just like not even in your heart. Like, to hear Jupiter talk, it's like sinfulness and heresy are in the body, and that's just like a weird
Can I tell you a Julia anecdote about
yes.
this?
The thing I was gonna say is like it is, as a person of color, the scope of that stands out to me more than the self-hatreds of Venus or Neptune.
Sure. So, despite everything else I've said, I did go to school with a number of people who were not white Christians. And like thought of many of them as some of my best friends. And one of the things that I like realized or encountered at like a surprisingly early age was well, wait a minute. If this person who always ends up in all of my classes because our last names are extremely like similar alphabetically, so we're always sorted next to each other. If like wherever she goes to in the afterlife, I can't go to like one better than her. Like that's just not how the world should work. So like, I guess I'm also going to hell.
Really?
That was the way that worked.
I don't know. I couldn't tell whether like I would be flattered or like worried in her position. That is either an expression of incredible maybe not even hatred, but like self neglect, or an expression of great solidarity. Somehow, probably actually both. Now that I think about it. And I appreciate one of those things.
I think at that age it would have been much more solidarity, but the like absoluteness of my belief in solidarity led me to the like, well, either everyone else around me is wrong or I am, but it's certainly not God that's wrong. So, like, well, I bet if I just study enough and read enough and like pray enough, and okay, I'll try and like read other like things too. I'll go and like talk to the Mormon kids and see whether I can borrow a copy of the Book of Mormon. I'll
actually
try to
it's funny you say that, because I was about to bring up I was talking to another ex-Mormon about her experience playing We Know the Devil, who is like in like one of the most parodically like Venus people I've ever met.
This person, I say it the same way I say Venus.
It's comedy, but it is interesting to me that like that. I mean, I say this every time, but it is like I said this last time and I say it this time, and like it like is there's nothing particularly insightful about this, but it's very weird how unquestionable that is.
Yeah.
Like the idea that God could be wrong. Like there's myths about gods being wrong in Hinduism, right? Like the Greek myths, gods are wrong all the time. It's a strange, like that sort of unquestioned authority is a very strange thing. And like even looking at Christianity, like, Judaism doesn't even have that. Judaism is very famously, like, has a tradition of arguing with God, about all these rules that God is supposed to have set down. So it's I don't know, that sense of authority is so. Christianity lives in this weird, like, Christianity being the most populous religion in the world is such an odd thing, because it means that it's like it's the thing people are most likely to have in common with each other, but it's still like a plurality and not a majority. So like it still feels deeply alien to me, and more so because of its popularity.
Sure. And I mean, not to mention the, like, are you familiar with the phrase, two nations divided by a common language?
No, but it's a good one.
It's a saying about the United States and the United Kingdom. I
would have said India and Pakistan, but all right.
Right. Like, I mean, I think it's a sentiment that you can depict about all things. I do think the, like, well, saying that, someone living in Eastern Denmark or like Southern Tatarstan who like happens to like be Christian in a flavor and variety that fits that place. And like a random Christian in the Midwest and a random Christian in like the Pacific Northwest, like the idea that they're all actually like believing something that they would consider having in common with one another seems like potentially surprising in some different ways. But I think getting back to Jupiter a little bit.
Yes, I also cut you off with your Mormon anecdote.
All of which is to say, I spent a long time and a lot of like effort under the assumption that there was a deeper meaning beyond the mistruths and like internal inconsistencies and like abuses that were surrounding me.
And that if you could find it, it would give you a moral system that allowed your clearly good non-Christian friends to find heaven at the ends of their lives.
Yes. And I think it was genuinely like both a desperate like attempt to escape the fact that I did feel a deep emotional and ethical solidarity and have like a slightly too clever brain for for like poking holes in things. I had a really funny thing to say and then my brain just stopped it. Oh no. Oh, okay. I got it. Okay. I'm gonna go credits up. Oh, wait, no, there we go. And I think the like idea that, okay, no, I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna come upon this revelation that will like come down to me either because I've been clever enough to figure it out or I tried hard enough that God spoke to me in one of his mysterious ways, right? Is all of the things that it is. It's, this attempt to square a circle. It's this attempt to like find good in a thing that you've been taught is good, but it's also a kind of like chinibio. You know what I mean? I think you're laughing.
So sorry for what I just did to our audio. Christ.
Oh no, the audio just didn't catch it at all.
I laughed. Oh my god. Oh, sorry. For me, it sounded like I laughed so hard and I was worried I was peeking something out. Oh my god, no, it is.
And like one that persisted. You know what I mean?
Very specifically kind of like nerd chuny. It's like, the anime character archetype of the one with the glasses who's like the tactician?
Sure,
That's what you wanted to be. You were going to be the person who was so smart that they figured out how to resolve the paradox of a loving God who allows suffering.
I mean, That would have been nice. I think I was genuinely thinking like much more like I'm gonna go walk out in the woods until things make sense. Um and like I'm going to keep praying like all the time until like I
Okay,
figure
yes, that's
out.
a little bit more conventionally tuney,
Yeah.
but like it fucked up to account for Christianity. Oh
I
my
think I talked
god.
about this on the first round, the idea of like the idea of praying as a sort of like tuning a radio, just like
Hmm.
trying to find the right like set of circumstances that
Hmm.
will lead to prayers actually being answered.
Hmm.
And kind of, all of this builds. And then eventually, like, it's very silly, but like, eventually I go to college and I get, handed a set of books. Um, and then I take my Bible classes in college. And the professor's
Wait,
like,
really?
hey, yeah, um, uh, and I'm writing a paper about, this is for my Old Testament class, about Jonah and the whale, right? Story where a whale eats a guy and then the
Uh-huh.
guy like survives it and everything. And I
Uh-huh.
write this thing, and the professor's like, "You know that this didn't happen, right?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like,
What?
"Yeah, no, it's like commonly accepted. Like this is not a history story. Like Nineveh didn't exist under that name at that time, or like that king didn't wasn't there at the same time, or
Sorry, no, I'm I like forgot about how biblical literalism worked.
uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So I
I
was in the I when I said what, I was not I was like I'm the professor.
mhm. And like imagine that I've like carefully built this entire like tower of things, and somebody points out it's like if you built an entire worldview in which the color red doesn't exist. And then somebody like pulls an apple out of their bag and goes, "But what about this?" Uh, uh, which I guess is fitting because like the apple and temptation and
Yeah.
but and I was just like, "Oh, wait a minute." And then, I wouldn't necessarily promote the guy these days, but I found reading The Selfish Gene, like the Dawkins book, incredibly useful, like incredibly elucidating, because all of these like myths about evolution that I've been taught, like it was like, oh no, there's actually like a really persuasive and like understandable like, and I was like, wait a minute, I've been missing out on like an entire field of science, an entire way of like knowing the world has been like hidden from me this entire time. When I first learned, this was several years earlier, I was a junior in high school, and I first learned the kinematic equations for describing like the physical
Hmm.
motion of bodies in space, was one of the most like profound moments of joy of my entire life. Like
Right.
someone would have at their wedding. Because I was like, oh my God, why is no one talking about this like every day of our lives? There are equations that describe the things that we experience in the physical world. Like, I don't think they like describe everything. I'm not like, this is the God equation or whatever, but like, why is no one talking about this? And like when I encountered like an actual explanation of how evolution works, I was like, oh my God. Oh, everybody's wrong about this. Everything I've ever been taught about this is wrong.
I need
Um,
to where did you I have a question and like
mhm.
insofar as everybody is fighting insofar as we all carry a version of our childhood selves who is perhaps much dumber than we are, I
Mhm.
think there is a Reddit atheist deep within me who I have to make sure to keep under control. Um,
Sure.
that said, because I do such a because I have made such I have not I don't like the social spaces I'm in are like generally not super religious, but like not that kind of atheist. Uh,
Mhm.
which means that it has been a long time since I remembered that sometimes you do actually need to tell people that like there's more evidence for evolution than there is for creation. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm. Mhm.
people clown on Reddit the sort of like Reddit style atheism, and I understand where that comes from, but like I do think that sometimes that clowning is brought on by a like, and perhaps this is me just trying to validate something I felt in my childhood, but like I do feel that there is a degree of underestimation of like what fundamentalist Christians in this country are like feel like. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and it turns out that happens even in my own brain. All of this is to say, Juliet, what did you think about evolution before you read The Selfish Gene?
Um, so that it was that there were potential that any evidence towards evolution was actually just evidence of what's called microevolution,
Uh-huh.
which I learned
The
recently is
intellectual's objection.
I had learned I had not learned a rigorous apologetics, which is part of why anti-apologetics had been so useful, is because I'd gotten a very like scattershot version of apologetics. But for the most part, like
Apologetics. Go.
uh, how long is your program, as they say? Um, uh,
Okay, no, this is good enough for me.
yeah. I mean, the biggest thing is you just don't think about it, right? It's like, oh, well, it's possible that when they say God created the world in one day and then this thing the next day,
Uh-huh.
it also says in the Bible somewhere that to God, um, like 1 hour is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 days is as like 1 second.
Right.
Like, and therefore, who can say how old the earth is, or anything about like the history or cosmology of the world? Whatever gets found out, no matter what the important thing is, it doesn't shake our bedrock of like faith and everything. I didn't have like a clear view of things because all I knew was, oh, it's like evil and wrong, and there's this heresy called the Big Bang. That
Was it actually called a heresy?
I I think it was more like thought of as like something satanic. So worse than a heresy. I um y- like
I don't know. That's the thing, Juliet. I don't know. I don't know the devil.
I
That's why we're here.
uh-huh. Uh-huh. Um there was an idea, and like I grew up on the very like tail end of Satanic Panic stuff, of course.
Uh-huh.
But like, okay, this is a deeply ironic thing to talk about now for obvious reasons, but I snuck Harry Potter books home from the library and hid
Oh.
them like in the like bed frame underneath the guest bed in our house, and would like sneak down there and read uh read them underneath the bed.
Uh-huh.
Because of course, like, these things are evil. These things are, thank goodness, our particular flavor of church did not say that Pokemon was evil, or I'd be like a much sadder person than I am today.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but so the very idea that like, oh, the Big Bang is this new thing that they're trying to promote, this new obviously fake idea that says that the world came from like nothing forever ago, and they don't have any explanation for where the Big Bang came from, and like scientists don't agree about how long ago it was, and like, and so on and so on. I remember going to a natural history museum growing up that I later on worked
Oh,
at,
new
actually.
thing.
uh
Sorry,
and
wait, hang on. New thing is an insane thing to say, because this is a phrase that caught on, according to Wikipedia, in the 70s.
the Big Bang, sure, uh I, for the record, am not that old. uh
No, you're not 50?
uh, I am old enough to think that's a funny punchline because of an old SNL sketch. But that's because I spent a lot of time watching old SNL when I was like 14. Uh, anyways, all of which is to say, yes, the Big Bang was introduced to me at least as though it was this new thing circa like 1999, the year 2000 maybe. Like I mean I was young. And that like is important not to like think about it or believe it, and it's like obviously poppycock. Like you don't need to have a detailed debunking of it because it obviously doesn't make sense.
Uh-huh.
And this is part of apologetics, is like not having a cogent argument, but just having like rhetorical devices to defang particularly like salient points of pop culture and pop science that clearly don't agree with a literalist biblical worldview.
Uh-huh.
And then the like, you know, cutting edge on the other direction of Christianity says like any Christians who engage in apologetics, any Christians who say like, well, it's possible that the Bible might mean this and like might match up with therefore, you know, the fossil record or I don't know, gravity or antibiotics, you know, anything like that.
Yeah.
That cutting edge on the far other side would say like, well, that no, like, what are you doing? The Bible is literal and real, and anything else obviously is the devil tempting us. Satan put those fossils in the ground at the different levels to tempt us and to sway us away from the obviously true, correct thing, which is what's in the Bible, literally, that the God literally created the world in this specific
I understand that Satan is magical and like has supernatural evil powers, but the idea that like a devil is going around digging up the ground and like making fossils to put in there and then reburying them or whatever is so funny. Because like I don't think it was especially logical, but like God, in this worldview, God would not have created the false evidence when the Earth was created, right?
Yeah, but like...
Which means that they had to get put there later by Satan. And I understand, like, again, I understand that this is rhetoric. This is not meant to be, like... As literal as it is not actually meant to be understood literally so much as it is meant as an assertion of power, right? Like, I know that.
Mm-hmm.
But and also it's really funny to imagine, like, a devil digging up the earth, being like, I gotta bury all these fucking fossils, man.
But like,
it ain't much, but it's dishonest work.
If you believe, that's very funny. If you believe that God is like showing up to like individual people, like the creator of the universe shows up to individual people to like interact and test them on their daily life, and that like Satan or Lucifer, the devil, you know, one of the strongest of God's angels originally before he fell, which I assume you're familiar with like that part.
Yes. I didn't know that he was one of the strongest. I knew that he was supposed to be one of the more rebellious ones. Or, I mean, the most rebellious one given his position, but...
I think we assume he must have been one of the stronger ones because of a successful rebellion, if that makes sense. But I guess that's not, like, strictly canonical fact.
Is it successful if he's not God at the end of it?
He got away.
Did he?
Yeah, with a whole third of the angels. The whole third of the host.
But, like, also...
Like, I don't have to become...
No, but they're all in hell now, right? Like, they all got exiled... Like, that. I thought that was the whole thing. Like, yeah, they all got exiled to hell.
Yeah, but all hell is the absence of God's love and light.
Right.
Naturally, of course, is, like, eternal damnation and hellfire and all of the other things. I don't have to become my dad to be successful in rebelling against my father. I just have to not be like him and go away from him and not be near him anymore. So I guess
that's fair. I just like a rebellion to me is about hijacking the system of government. And either replacing or destroying it, which is why I don't think of it as successful, because God is still in charge of everything. Implicitly including hell.
and like we can get into the harrowing of hell, one of my favorite topics, but we should probably get back to by Commodius Vicus, drawn by gravity to Jupiter, uh,
Yes.
and her exclusion. Just like God is excluded from hell and Satan is excluded from heaven.
Somehow
Jupiter.
I don't think it's just like God is excluded from hell. I think it's mostly the way Satan is excluded from heaven in this one.
Okay, your mileage may vary. Just like Satan has his hands in every fossil, Jupiter has her hands. So what's your we like teased around the idea of the hair tie earlier. I'm curious to hear what your actual like thoughts are on the hair tie and what it's representing.
I mean, it's like fairly transparently, I won't say fairly transparent. To me, it seems obvious that the hair tie is an expression of like, it's a self-punishment thing, right? Like Jupiter self-harms every time she has a bad thought, but with the hair tie. Then she snaps the hair tie at the end and goes full devil because she can no longer restrain the thoughts that she feels are inherently sinful.
I had not thought of that at all. So I'm so glad to hear you explain it.
No, and it's like I like some of this is also that I just have the benefit of having seen the true ending, which like gestures at some other stuff. Like characters talk about some things they don't talk about in these routes so far. I'm very excited for us to get to the true ending because I think it will clarify a lot of things for you that like there are things I've explained about these characters that I think are informed by the true ending that that will like once you get to the true ending, you will understand how I've come to the conclusions that I've come to, I think.
That makes a lot of sense, and I'm really excited for it. In my head, I'm like, oh, so clearly in the true ending, Venus loses both of her eyes, Neptune loses her ability to speak, and Jupiter loses her ability to touch.
Oh god.
Which made me realize classic bit from uppercase J Jesus. The idea that if your eye causes you to sin, it is better to pluck the eye out of your head than to like continue living with it. And obviously, like leaning on Venus with the eyes to fly and wings to see and what have you. But this idea of specific self-harm in that way, because I kept thinking about Jupiter doing this in the sense of like trying to stay awake, trying to stay in this moment, like, oh, has she experienced a concussion? And therefore, like the idea of sleeping after experiencing a concussion is a dangerous thing. Is she someone who has a sleep disorder? And like, this is one of the reasons why she struggles with so many things, but she's like trying really hard to go through it. Or like other types of self-harm, but I hadn't factored in that idea of self-harm specifically reflecting like in response to a stimuli. That makes sense.
Because if you track them, like they often show up when like just after Neptune like flirts with her, basically, right?
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. In the same way that when Neptune is about to be like, hey, you're hating yourself too much to either of them, she coughs instead.
Yeah, and then says something meaner instead of kinder. Or whenever Venus wants to express any desire of any kind ever.
Dang, these
Instead,
kids.
she gets distracted by lights.
I'm glad this game was made. I know that sad things happening to them is part of how fiction works, but I'm sad that it's not just nice things for these kids who deserve good things.
One more route.
Yeah, one more route. Oh, I get it. The final route is the Group South route.
Finally, bad things only happen to kids who deserve it.
That's actually the sequel. We Know the Devil 2, Group South DLC.
There is actually a demo that came out, I think, when it went on
Mhm.
Steam, which is just like the hour right before they get to the camp or something. Um,
Okay.
it's like free. We could download that and play that because like we have seen all the content from the first half of the game at this point, so it might be something nice to fill that time. Uh,
Should we play that before we do the fourth route, like as the like intro to the fourth route?
yeah, I was thinking about that. I'm not
Okay.
certain yet. I have to I'll go replay it. I'll go reread it because I think it's basically just the length of a scene here. Uh,
Okay.
so it wouldn't be adding a ton, and we've done the opening scenes all a bunch anyway. Um, anyway, more broadly, I think the thing that what have we talked about? We've talked about the scope of Jupiter's condemnation. We have talked about uh uh the 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 hair tie as an expression of self harm, Jupiter and sexuality.
Yeah.
Uh, what were we? I don't know. But here's the thing. I said that. I just because I understand that intellectually doesn't mean I understand it. And this is one of the things I was hoping you would have a better handle on than I do.
Maybe. I think so, maybe. I which is to say, well, this is such a tricky topic. For a lot of reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Jupiter's specific and general desire, I think, is like really specifically shown to us here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that might seem weird to be like, oh, how is it like general and specific? But like it really is. Um, both in the infinite number of hands and the specific ones that we are like told about.
Yeah.
I I think it one flexible reading of the idea of I want to hurt, I want to be hurt is a just more generic, like, it is good to engage in the physical contact of other people, even when that entails like not great things. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Hence why we have sports. You know what I mean? Uh,
Yeah.
we create complex rituals that allow us to touch the flesh of other people, right? Um, but also, I do think I don't know. And please, audience member, forgive me if you will for taking this to an extra level. But I do think it's also an expression of how uh, a particular kind of suppression of desire can be like sublimated or reoccur itself in a like tendency towards BDSM.
I don't think that's. No, I think that's there. I think that's text.
Uh,
Or at least
and
as close to it as like.
right. I and I do think it's interesting to see.
Listen, Neptune got
Mhm.
made out with and Venus got choked.
Sure. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I I I also think Jupiter at the end of this route has a much clearer through line, and this is going to be weird, but like Neptune is a lesbian,
Uh-huh.
Venus is a trans girl, and
Uh-huh.
Jupiter is like bi, but in a weird way. If that makes sense, like only as long as it's queer, sort of like. Which like we know lots of people like that, right?
Yeah. I don't know that I've
Uh,
ever heard anybody describe Jupiter that way before you.
I think it is relatable. I think it's
Uh-huh.
honestly it's a weird thing to say about it, but like as it's presented to us, it's like, oh, this is like an extremely like healthy thing. Um
Which thing?
uh, Jupiter's like um Jupiter expressing this.
Yes.
uh, which is to say that like a thing I think is so true about all three of the devils that we've seen so far is like just don't beat the devil. Like, don't work together with your radios. Don't use these incense and fire and crystal and water and sound and static and ritual to like destroy the human thing in you. Let the human thing like rejoice with the human thing in others.
Yeah.
And it I think it's, and this is one of those things that I think when I say, like I did an hour ago at this point, probably, that this game could have been less subtle and still be great, is I think for some people playing this game, they will not get that. And maybe the true ending will help like clarify that some. But
I think it will.
yeah, the context and the
I'm like
text.
sad we don't have the like. I literally don't have the time for us to do it.
Oh yeah,
right
no,
now.
we absolutely don't have time for that.
I wish we did.
Yeah, I think that is both really clear to me. I'm really, really glad to hear it from you. Uh, and I think it's like important to reflect on in Jupiter trying this expression. Um, there's something to say about like the storm and this big like red storm and things. But it we don't I don't think that's as relevant as like the Ichor is or the eyes and light are for Venus, for Neptune and Venus respectively.
Yeah. I mean, the storm is like the medium of the hands, I guess, which feels
Sure.
like the hands. Jupiter's hands are Neptune's Ichor or Venus's eyes.
And sure, that makes sense. And I guess the storm gets us like hands plus humidity, which of course has its own implications there, which I think is
heat
really
and humidity especially. Like,
Mm-hmm.
these carry sexual connotations.
I was afraid that I had known like, okay, there's going to be a thing with Jupiter in hands, like that had become clear to me as we started this route, or before we had started this third route. I had been afraid that it was going to be much more about like, oh, I have been touched in ways that are not good, and I am like reflecting the fact that I'm still finding that trauma re-inflicted on myself by the fact that I can't seem to find any positivity in things, which I do think that that's still potential reading to hear in specifically the idea of like, don't touch anyone and don't let anyone touch you. With some of the other things that we like heard, with some of the other things but the way Jupiter's like, oh, it's not, both in her discussion with Venus, that, oh, someone doesn't have to touch you for it to be like a bad thing.
Yeah.
And whether or not like, oh, she's like, her heart has already been like hurt or whatever, I do think the existence of sexual abuse within church adjacent structures, cultural structures, not physical structures, is, I think, frequent enough that, and like specific enough in what Jupiter alludes to, that I think it can be tied to, in a person, well, I did not want that thing to happen to me. I want something else with other people. But that clearly is like a bad thing that happened to me. And therefore, for me to want a like consenting, mutual, like cool thing with somebody else must therefore be like reduplicating the harm. And like, I'm clearly damned for having like emotions and desires.
Right, because your only experience of those is
in a traumatic and bad way.
And you think they're gonna traumatize the like whoever you're inflicting your desire on?
Right. And like the fact that
that
she
is
then
that is actually extremely useful. Like I don't think I ever drew that connection that directly. But like having it peel like back like that does, I think, make some things click for me in the way that like, I was saying that like Jupiter's deep sense of shame in the like Christian sense is very alien to me. And I think like I said that, and I think it was aware. Like, as much as I talk about how alien this all is, like, I don't. This is a game that uses Christianity to talk about mechanisms of social control that are not unique to Christianity. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely, 100%.
these. Having said, I grew up in a fairly like mixed religious like environment, and even then, I can say I was a Venus, and like my best friend was a Neptune in high school, right?
Mhm,
Like, and
mhm.
given that, I don't think I ever like really believed that there was no such thing as like a Jupiter equivalent from where I was from. Um, but I didn't think I knew how to translate. Like, I could translate the Venus of a Christian environment to the Venus of a secular environment or of a
Mhm,
mixed religious environment. I could translate that for Neptune too. But I don't think
mhm.
I've ever quite been able to translate it for Jupiter until just now, where it seems to have as much to do with like beyond all this stuff about shame and whatever. There is like a level of like not wanting to do to others, like not being able to distinguish between a healthy version of the desire for others that you feel and the unhealthy version of others' desire for you that was used to harm you.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
that feels like, I think you did it. You did the thing I was hoping you would do, which is help me figure out Jupiter.
I I do want to be clear that I don't think that is the only read on Jupiter, and
Yeah,
that
and to be clear, I don't think it's necessarily that Jupiter's experienced any specific trauma either, right? Like,
Mhm.
or rather, like that's not like.
The game is open
Uh,
to multiple readings on that front,
yes,
and multiple
exactly.
readings on what thing felt like it damned her in her heart.
Yeah, but even then, like even just looking at game text, we do get the version where Jupiter talks to Venus about like, oh, it's weird that the bonfire captain like likes them so much, right?
Mhm,
Like,
mhm.
it's like Jupiter says, I don't want to be the kind of person the bonfire captain likes, and then like, given that, doesn't want Venus or Neptune to have to be the kind of people to struggle with being the kind of people that like Jupiter likes.
Sure, sure, totally.
Because like she is struggling to distinguish between the kind of like the feelings the bonfire captain has to control or to like be affectionate with or whatever, and her own feeling and her own desires towards like um towards Venus and Neptune.
I do think the other thing I would say on this topic is having, like, read and experienced the game and everything,
Uh
Jupiter's experience of the, like, hands running against her scalp,
huh.
I think feels especially, like, poignant and dark,
Uh
if
huh.
that makes sense, like, as this, like, sensory, like, feedback thing that we're reflecting on like, there's a positive reading of it, which is, like, it's her desire to be touched, uh,
Hmm.
and that she's just afraid of that desire.
Hmm.
The flip side of it is to read it negatively, which I don't know, like, I'm kind of torn on because I don't like to read the devil possession generally as a negative thing.
Yeah,
Um,
I would encourage that tendency.
yeah, yeah, I'm gonna take back my idea that that's a dark thing because I think it's a much more the reading makes much more sense from beginning to end if you follow the other three line instead.
Yeah.
It is interesting to me, though, to think about specifically one of the things Jupiter said. We get more dialogue in Jupiter's ending than the other two rounds, I feel. Um,
Yeah, I think that also is true too. Because like they, um, there's much
I
more back and
Mhm.
forth, right? Like, uh,
In Venus's, they are mostly talking about running away,
yeah,
and in Neptune's, part of the thing is not talking because
yeah, and it's
there's
also so
nothing.
adversarial that they don't get the chance to talk about it because, like, half of
Mhm,
that scene is Neptune throwing people into the wall. Um,
mhm.
uh, yeah,
I think it's interesting to think about Jupiter saying, "Oh, I was so happy to hear the doctrine." that like doing good works could help you.
Mhm.
Because that could mean I could do enough good things. Like my heart was always going to be wrong. My heart was
Mhm.
always going to be unsalvageable.
Mhm.
My soul is always going to be more than the weight of a feather, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but my actions I do have control over. And
Mhm.
that I can like methodically work really, really hard and try so hard. And as we see in the Venus and Jupiter discussion about like, do you really think that like everyone else tries harder than you do?
Mhm.
And Jupiter's like, well, of course they must. And Venus is like, are you sure? Like that everyone's always trying harder than you're trying. Jupiter's like, I guess not. And Venus says, hey, then maybe that's an indication that the things that are happening to you are not fair things.
Yeah.
But I think those two things really kind of help feed into or like read into one another.
Mhm. I
And then
forgot
she's like,
about that scene.
and then she says, "Oh,
It's a
but
really
then
good
I
one though.
learned that that was heresy. Then I learned that that was that we don't believe that anymore." And like
Uh-huh.
the sense of we don't believe that anymore, meaning that isn't true anymore. It could have been true, but it isn't true anymore, and it doesn't get to be true for me. And
Yeah.
therefore, I'm damned. And anything I touch is going to be damned, and I can't touch you because you, no matter how bad you might be, are never going to be nearly as bad as I am until I touch you and make you as bad as me.
Uh-huh.
What a tragic girl. I say about someone who has no reflection on my own life at all. Uh,
Oh, are you tricked? Have you been tricked into
man,
acknowledging the weight of your own experiences?
it sucks that this happened to Jupiter, who didn't deserve it.
Oh God.
uh, I well, I am so excited for the next time around.
Mhm.
I still don't know how I'm gonna edit this one particularly, but I bet I have options. Shall we end it here, do you think?
I think this is a good place. Yeah, we'll sign off next time. Possibly we know the demo, and then also True Root. That is what
The
it's called.
we know the demo. Ah, yes. Shout out to ABB, the whole team, everyone who's got a good sense of humor about this stuff. Um, this would all be not nearly so fun and so possible of like reaching such themes as it does if it wasn't also funny. Um, Hi, I've been Juliet. You can find this show at Mousewife Games on YouTube and my writings at Folly on co-host.
I'm Kavita. You can find me at Your Girl KV on co-host, and you can find my tabletop work at yourgirlkv.itch.io.
We've been playing We Know the Devil.
Catch us next time on The Devil We Know.